Brenda signed the papers at 9:15 that morning. Her father's body was still at the funeral home, still warm. The house she was selling, 3 bedrooms, white fence, magnolia tree out front, he built it. Drove a taxi 18 hours a day for 7 years. Every nail, every board, every coat of paint, and she sold it the same day he died. Didn't even walk inside, just signed and handed over the keys. And the worst part, she didn't know what he'd hidden inside those walls. Something that would have changed everything if only she'd waited one more day. But to understand how a daughter could do this to her own father, we need to go back, way back, to a night in Memphis when everything changed for a man named Jermaine Carter. And trust me, by the time you hear what this man sacrificed and what his daughter did with it, you will not be the same. Join me as we dive into this story. But before we do, my best friend looked me dead in the eye last week and said nobody is going to watch your videos. I need you and me to prove him wrong. Just click subscribe right now. Hit the like button. Share this with someone who loves their father. That is all I ask. Thank you. Now let us go back to where it all began. The Memphis heat in July does not play around. It sits on the city like a wet blanket. Heavy, thick, the kind of heat that makes the asphalt soft under your shoes and turns every car into an oven the moment you park it. And on Lamar Avenue in the summer of 2016, a faded yellow Crown Victoria rolled through traffic at 6 minutes past 4 in the morning. The leather seats were cracked and peeling. The air conditioning had not worked in 2 years. A small photo of a girl, maybe 9 or 10 years old, was clipped to the sun visor with a rubber band, and behind the wheel sat Jermaine Carter, 49 years old, 5'11", hands rough like sandpaper from 23 years of gripping that steering wheel. He had deep lines around his eyes, not from laughing, from squinting through windshields at 3 in the morning when the streetlights barely worked. Jermaine drove for Delta Cab, a small company out of South Memphis that ran 8 cars total. The pay was simple. You kept 60% of the meter. The rest went to the company. On a good day, Jermaine cleared about $150. On a bad day, maybe $80. On a real bad day, he would sit in the airport queue for 2 hours and get a ride to a hotel 6 blocks away. That was the life. No benefits, no retirement plan, no sick days. You drive or you do not eat. Jermaine lived in a duplex on Gill Avenue, a narrow street in South Memphis where everybody knew everybody. The houses were small, close together, most of them rentals. His unit had 2 bedrooms, a kitchen the size of a closet, and 1 window air conditioning unit. That unit was in Brenda's room, not his. Jermaine slept with a box fan pointed at his face and a damp towel on his chest during the worst summer nights. He never once moved that AC unit into his own room. When Curtis Hayes, his buddy who drove the night shift, asked him about it, Jermaine just shrugged. "She is my daughter, Curtis. She sleeps cool. I will be all right." That was Jermaine. Never much for words, never dramatic about anything. He showed love the way a lot of men from his generation did, quietly, through what he did, not what he said. Every morning he woke at 4, not 4:30, not 4:15, 4 o'clock sharp, and the first thing he did was not start the car. It was walk into the kitchen, pull out a skillet, and make Brenda's breakfast. Scrambled eggs, 2 pieces of toast, a glass of orange juice from concentrate because the real stuff was too expensive. He would set it on the table, wrap it in foil if she was not up yet, and tuck a $5 bill into the front pocket of her backpack for lunch, every single day. Then he would grab his keys, lock the door quietly, and walk out into the dark. Curtis would already be on the radio. "Jay, you up, I am up. Lamar or the airport, Lamar first. Airport after 7. That was their routine. Curtis and Jermaine had driven together for over 15 years. Curtis was louder, funnier, always had an opinion. Jermaine was the quiet one. But Curtis understood him better than anyone. "You know what I respect about you, Jay Curtis," said one morning over the radio. "You never complain. Not once. I have known you 15 years, and I have never heard you say life is not fair." Jermaine was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What good would that do? And he meant it. Complaining did not put gas in the car. It did not pay the electric bill. It did not keep Brenda fed. Jermaine had figured out a long time ago that life was not about what you deserved. It was about what you did with what you had. And what Jermaine had was a cab, a work ethic, and a daughter he would die for. One afternoon, Curtis pulled up next to Jermaine at the airport taxi stand, both windows down. Curtis leaned over. "Jay, you ever think about doing something else? Driving for Uber, maybe? Better money." Jermaine shook his head. "I know this car. I know these streets. I am too old to start over." "You are 49, man. That is not old." "Feels old," Jermaine said. And he rubbed his lower back with one hand while gripping the wheel with the other. Curtis watched him and did not say anything else. But he noticed something that day. Jermaine's hands were shaking. Just a little? Just enough to see? He did not mention it. And Jermaine would not have talked about it anyway. That was just who he was. A man who carried everything on his own shoulders and never once asked for help. And that, as you will soon find out, was both his greatest strength and the thing that would eventually break him. Now, to understand Jermaine, you have to understand what happened 7 years before this story begins. Back when Brenda was 10 years old and the Carter family still had a mother, Lorraine Carter was a woman built from faith and stubbornness. She worked the front desk at a dentist office on Poplar Avenue. Not glamorous work, but steady. She was the kind of woman who ironed her scrubs the night before packed lunches for all 3 of them, and still had energy to braid Brenda's hair every single morning before school. Lorraine was the center of that house. She was the reason the bills got organized. She was the reason the duplex smelled like pine sol and pound cake on Sundays. She was the reason Jermaine smiled. Then one Tuesday afternoon, she found a lump. She told herself it was nothing. She waited 2 weeks, then 3. By the time she saw a doctor, it was stage 3, breast cancer, the kind that had already spread to her lymph nodes. The next 14 months were the hardest of Jermaine's life. Lorraine went through chemo at Regional 1. The treatments made her thin, made her tired, made her hair fall out in clumps on the pillow. But every morning, no matter how sick she felt, she got up and braided Brenda's hair. Her fingers would shake. Sometimes she had to stop halfway and catch her breath. But she finished, every time. Brenda would sit on the floor between her mother's knees, quiet, feeling those fingers move through her hair, not fully understanding that those mornings were numbered. Jermaine did what he knew how to do. He drove more. He picked up night shifts on top of his day shifts. He would come home at midnight, check on Lorraine, eat cold leftovers, standing at the kitchen counter, and sleep for 4 hours before doing it all again. When the medical bills got too high, he sold his watch, then his tools. Then, one night, he took off his wedding ring, looked at it for a long time, and drove it to a pawn shop on Elvis Presley Boulevard. He got $240 for it, just enough to cover 1 month of medication. Lorraine noticed the bare finger the next morning. She did not say a word. She just took his hand and held it. On a Thursday night in October, 14 months after the diagnosis, the hospice nurse told Jermaine it would be soon. Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. He sent Brenda to Thelma's house next door. Then he pulled a chair up to the bed and sat. Lorraine was thin, so thin, but her eyes were clear. She looked at him and spoke slowly. "Jermaine, I am here. Promise me one thing, anything. Build her a home. Not just a house, a home. Somewhere she will always feel safe. Somewhere she knows she is loved. Even when I am not there." Jermaine squeezed her hand. "I promise you, Lorraine. I promise." She smiled. A small smile. Then she closed her eyes. She passed at 2:17 in the morning. Jermaine was still holding her hand. The next day, Brenda came home from Thelma's. She walked into the bedroom and saw the empty bed. The sheets had been changed. The room smelled like cleaning spray. But the braiding comb was still on the nightstand. Brenda picked it up and held it against her chest. Then she looked at her father standing in the doorway, and she ran to him. She buried her face in his shirt and sobbed. "I will never leave you, Daddy. I promise, I will never leave you." Jermaine held his daughter one hand on the back of her head and stared at the wall. He did not cry. Not because he was not breaking, but because he knew if he started, he might not stop. Jermaine kept that promise in his heart for the next 18 years. He never remarried, he never complained, he just drove. The years after Lorraine passed were quiet, not peaceful, just quiet. The kind of quiet that fills a house when someone who used to sing in the kitchen is not there anymore. Jermaine did his best. And his best was clumsy sometimes, awkward, but it was constant. When Brenda turned 12, her hair started to matter. The other girls at school had neat braids, twists edges, laid down smooth. Brenda came home one day and did not say anything. But Jermaine noticed she was wearing a hoodie pulled tight over her head. That night, after she went to sleep, Jermaine sat at the kitchen table with his phone propped against a sugar jar watching a YouTube video on how to do box braids. His hands were too big, his fingers too stiff. The first attempt looked like a mess. But he tried again the next night. And the night after that. By the end of the month, he could do a decent set of braids. Not salon quality, but enough that Brenda stopped wearing the hoodie. She never told him thank you. She did not have to. He saw it in the way she looked at herself in the mirror before school. That was enough. When Brenda was 14, she needed a dress for her school dance. Jermaine drove her to a shop on Winchester Road. He sat in the car for 2 hours in his work clothes, the taxi parked right out front. When she came out holding a pink dress in a plastic bag, she was smiling so wide he could see it from the parking lot. "You like it?" he asked. "I love it, Daddy." Then it was worth the wait. He did not mention that the dress cost him 2 full days of driving. She did not need to know that. Every semester, Jermaine went to parent-teacher conferences. He was always the only man in the room. He sat in chairs built for children, his long legs folded under tiny desks, and asked questions that surprised the teachers. Is she turning in her homework on time? Does she participate in class, or just sit quiet? Is she hanging around the right kids? The teachers liked him. They could see he was trying. And in a school where most kids did not have a father who showed up at all, Jermaine Carter was there every single time. But he could not do everything alone. That is where Thelma Banks came in. Thelma lived in the other half of the duplex. She was 71 years old, retired from the post office, and had raised 4 kids and 7 grandchildren. She had a voice that carried through walls and an opinion about everything. When Brenda was 13 and got her first period, it was Thelma who sat her down and explained what was happening. Jermaine had tried. He had bought pads from the store, left them on her bed with a handwritten note that said, "Thelma will talk to you about this." Thelma laughed about that note for years. That man drove through thunderstorms at 3 a.m, but could not have a conversation about menstruation. Lord have mercy. But she said it with love, because she knew what Jermaine was. He was a good man doing an impossible job, and he never once made it about himself. Things were good. Not easy, but good. Until Brenda started high school. Something shifted. Small at first. The kind of thing you do not notice until it is already a pattern. Brenda stopped riding in the taxi with her father to school. She said she preferred the bus. Then she stopped mentioning him to her friends. One afternoon, Jermaine was picking her up from a friend's house and heard Brenda's voice through the screen door. "What does your dad do?" her friend asked. There was a pause. A pause that lasted just a beat too long. "He is in transportation," Brenda said. Not a lie, but not the truth either. Jermaine sat in the car and heard it. He did not react, did not say a word on the drive home. But that evening, Curtis found him sitting in the Crown Victoria in the driveway. Engine off, lights off, just sitting there, staring at nothing. "Jay, you good?" "I am fine." "Curtis, you do not look fine." I said, "I am fine." Curtis let it go, but he stood on the sidewalk for a long moment after Jermaine went inside, and he shook his head, because he knew Jermaine Carter was not the kind of man who sat in the dark for no reason. Something was starting to crack, and it was not the car. It was a Tuesday night in March when the idea took hold. Brenda was 20 years old, enrolled at Southwest Tennessee Community College, studying part-time. She was doing okay. Not great, not terrible, just okay. And Jermaine was sitting at the kitchen table after a 14-hour shift eating leftover rice and beans when he looked around the duplex and something hit him. The ceiling had a water stain shaped like a fist. The linoleum in the kitchen was peeling at the corners. The front door did not lock right unless you lifted it and pushed at the same time. This was not a home. This was a place they survived in, and he had promised Lorraine something better. That night, after Brenda went to sleep, Jermaine sat at that same kitchen table with a calculator, a pencil, and a yellow legal pad. He wrote a number at the top of the page. $85,000. That was what a small 3-bedroom house cost in Whitehaven, a quiet neighborhood on the south side of Memphis. Working class. Mostly black families. Good schools. A church on every other corner. It was the kind of place where Lorraine would have wanted Brenda to grow up. $85,000. Jermaine stared at that number for a long time. On a good day, he brought home about $150 to $200. After gas, car maintenance, food, rent, utilities, and Brenda's expenses, he could save maybe $40 to $60 a day. If he pushed it, if he cut everything else out, he did the math. At that rate, saving every dollar he could, it would take him roughly 7 years. 7 years of driving. 7 years of grinding. 7 years of not buying anything for himself. He wrote 3 words at the bottom of the page. I can do this. The next morning, Jermaine bought a small composition notebook from the dollar store. Black cover. White label on the front. He wrote on that label in careful block letters. For Brenda's house. Promise to Lorraine. And from that day forward, every single night, no matter how tired he was, Jermaine sat at the kitchen table and recorded the day. The date. How many hours he drove. How much he earned. How much he saved. The running total. Every page was the same. Neat columns, no wasted space. Like a man building a house 1 brick at a time on paper before he ever laid a real one. And here's where the schedule changed. Before the notebook, Jermaine drove 12 to 14 hours a day. After the notebook, he drove 18. His alarm went off at 3:30 in the morning. By 4, he was on the road. He would drive straight through breakfast. Lunch was whatever he could eat with one hand while the other stayed on the wheel. A gas station sandwich, a bag of chips, sometimes just a bottle of water and nothing else until dinner. He drove through the morning rush. He drove through the dead hours in the middle of the day when most cabbies parked and waited. He drove through the evening rush. He drove past sunset, past the time when the streets got quiet, and the only passengers were people coming out of bars or leaving late shifts at the hospital. He would pull into the driveway at 10 o'clock at night, sometimes later. His lower back would be locked up so tight he had to sit in the car for a full minute before he could stand. His right ankle swelled from pressing the gas pedal all day. His neck made a sound like dry wood cracking when he turned it. And his eyes burned, especially on night drives when the headlights from oncoming traffic felt like needles. Now, this is something worth knowing. In the United States, taxi drivers and rideshare workers have some of the highest rates of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and chronic back pain of any profession. The reasons are simple. You sit for 18 hours. You eat whatever is fast and cheap. You sleep 5 hours or less, and you do it day after day after day for years. That was Jermaine's life now. He never saw a doctor, could not afford to miss a day. Every day off was money not saved. Every dollar not saved was one more day his daughter did not have a home, so he drove. Curtis noticed the change. Jay, you are going to kill yourself at this pace. I am fine. You are not fine. You look like you have not slept in a week. I said, I am fine. Curtis let it drop, but he watched his friend with growing worry. One night, around month 4 of the new schedule, Curtis pulled up beside Jermaine at a gas station on Poplar. Jermaine was pumping gas, and his hands were shaking again. Worse this time. Jay, talk to me. What is going on? Why are you doing this? Jermaine looked at him, thought about it. Then, for the first time, he told someone. I am building Brenda a house. Curtis stared at him. You are what? A house. In Whitehaven. I did the math. If I drive 18 hours a day for 7 years, I can do it. 7 years. That is the plan. Curtis was quiet for a long time. Then he shook his head. Not in disagreement. In disbelief. You are the craziest man I know, Jermaine Carter. Jermaine almost smiled. Almost. Do not tell anyone. Especially not Brenda. I want it to be a surprise. I want to see her face when she walks through that front door for the first time. Curtis looked at his friend. Shaking hands, swollen ankles, dark circles carved deep under his eyes, and he made a decision right there. All right, your secret is safe with me. But Jay, please eat something tonight. Something real. I will. He did not. He went home, ate cold rice, wrote in the notebook, and set his alarm for 3:30. The number at the bottom of the page read $4,218, 75 more months to go. 2 years into the plan, Brenda dropped out of community college. She did not tell Jermaine right away. He found out 3 weeks later when he called to ask about her grades, and she went quiet on the other end of the line. I am taking a break, Daddy. School is not for me right now. Jermaine closed his eyes. He did not argue. He had learned a long time ago that you could not force Brenda to do something she did not want to do. She had her mother's stubbornness. What are you going to do? He asked. I got a job at a salon. Keisha's cousin runs it. The tips are good. Okay, baby girl, just be smart with your money. I will, Daddy. She was 22 now, living in an apartment off Summer Avenue with a roommate she had met through the salon. The place was small and the rent was steep, but Brenda liked having her own space. And slowly, without either of them noticing at first, the distance grew. The phone calls got shorter. Jermaine would call on Sunday evenings, the way he always had. How are you doing, baby girl? Fine. You eating okay? Yeah. You need anything? No, Daddy. I am good. I gotta go. Click. 3 minutes. That was the average now. Used to be 20. Jermaine told himself she was just busy. Young people are busy. She had a job, a social life, friends. That was normal. He did not let himself think about the other possibility, that she was pulling away. One Saturday, Jermaine drove 40 minutes across town to visit her. He brought a container of smothered chicken and rice. Lorraine's recipe, the one Brenda used to beg for when she was little. He knocked on the apartment door. Brenda opened it, phone in hand, mid-scroll. Dad, what are you doing here? Just wanted to see you. Brought some food. Oh, you did not have to come all the way here. She stepped aside to let him in, but she did not put the phone down. The apartment smelled like perfume and flat iron heat. Jermaine set the food on the counter. He looked around. There were shopping bags by the couch, new shoes in a box by the door, a designer purse hanging on a hook that cost more than what he made in a week. He did not say anything about it. You want to eat together? He asked. I actually have plans in like an hour, Daddy. But thank you. I will eat it later. He hugged her. She hugged back, but it was quick. One arm. The kind of hug you give someone at the door. He drove home in silence. No radio, no calls to Curtis. Just the hum of the engine and the sound of his own breathing. The next day, Denise Parker called Brenda. Denise had grown up 3 houses down from the Carters on Gill Avenue. She and Brenda had been close since kindergarten. Denise still lived in South Memphis and still saw Jermaine almost every week. Girl, your daddy came to see you yesterday, and you could not even sit down and eat with him. Who told you that he did not have to tell me? I know him. He came back looking like somebody took the air out of him. Brenda, when was the last time you called that man Denise? He is fine. He likes working. It keeps him busy. He does not like working, Brenda. He works because he has to. There is a difference. Brenda was quiet for a second. Then she changed the subject, and Denise let her. But she did not forget that conversation. And neither should you. It was around this time that Darren Mitchell walked into Brenda's life. He came into the salon on a Wednesday afternoon, tall, clean shave, fitted jeans, and a crisp white shirt, like he had somewhere important to be. He sat in the waiting area scrolling through his phone with the kind of relaxed confidence that made people look twice. When Brenda finished with her client, Darren walked up to the counter. "I am not here for a cut," he said with a smile. "I just saw you through the window and thought I would come say hello." Most women would have rolled their eyes, but Darren had something, a warmth in his voice, a way of looking at you like you were the only person in the room. Brenda smiled despite herself. "That is a bold move." "I am a bold guy." They exchanged numbers. Within a week they were texting every day. Within a month they were together almost every night. Darren told Brenda he was an entrepreneur. He said he was building a brand. Social media marketing consulting, that kind of thing. His Instagram was full of photos at nice restaurants standing next to leased cars posing in hotel lobbies. It looked impressive if you did not ask too many questions. And Brenda did not ask too many questions. Now, let me be clear about something. Darren Mitchell was not a monster. He was not a cartoon villain who twirled his fingers and plotted evil. He was something more dangerous than that. He was charming. He was smart. He knew how to say the right thing at exactly the right time. And he knew how to shift the way someone thought about their own life without them even realizing it was happening. It started with small comments. They were eating dinner one night, and Brenda mentioned her father. Darren tilted his head. "Your pops is still driving a cab. At his age, that has got to be rough on his body." "He has been doing it forever," Brenda said. "It is all he knows." "Yeah. But do you ever think about why Darren leaned back in his chair? I mean, no offense, but if someone works that hard for that many years and still does not have anything to show for it, that is not bad luck. That is bad planning. Your family deserved better financial literacy." He said it casually, like it was just an observation, not an insult. But the seed was planted, and Darren knew exactly what he was doing. Over the next few months, Darren introduced Brenda to his circle. They went to rooftop bars, brunch spots where a plate of eggs cost $22, pool parties at houses that belonged to friends of friends of friends. Everyone in that circle looked like they had money. New clothes, new cars, big talk about investments and opportunities. What Brenda did not see was that most of them were drowning in debt. Credit cards maxed out, car payments 3 months behind, living a lifestyle they could not afford. But from the outside it looked like success. And next to that world, Jermaine's life, the taxi, the duplex, the dollar store notebook, looked like failure. Brenda did not think of it that way, not consciously. But the comparison was always there, quiet, growing. The day Jermaine met Darren, Brenda brought him to the duplex for Sunday dinner. Darren shook Jermaine's hand firmly, looked him in the eye, called him "Sir," said all the right things about how much he respected Brenda and how he admired hard-working men. Jermaine was polite. He served dinner. He asked Darren about his work and nodded at the answers. But Jermaine Carter had been driving a taxi for over 20 years. He had sat behind the wheel while people talked on the phone, argued with their partners, lied to their bosses, cried, laughed, confessed things they would never say sober. He had learned to read people the way some folks read books. You watched the eyes, not what they said, what their eyes did when they thought no one was paying attention. And Darren's eyes moved too much. They scanned the room, measured things, calculated. Not the eyes of a man in love, the eyes of a man doing inventory. After Darren and Brenda left, Jermaine called Curtis. "What did you think?" Curtis asked. "Something in that boy's eyes is not right. You sure you are not just being a protective father?" "Could be. But I have been reading faces from the driver's seat for 23 years, Curtis. I know when someone is performing." Curtis sighed. "She is a grown woman, Jay. You cannot choose for her." Jermaine was quiet. He knew Curtis was right. But knowing that did not make the knot in his stomach go away. Jermaine had spent his life reading people from the driver's seat. He was rarely wrong. And he was not wrong about Darren Mitchell. 5 years into the plan, Jermaine had saved just over $68,000. Every dollar earned behind that steering wheel, every dollar recorded in that black notebook with the white label on the front. And now finally it was time. He found the lot on a Thursday afternoon. A quarter-acre on Shelby Drive in Whitehaven, right across from a Baptist church with a white steeple. The street was lined with oak trees, and the houses were small but well kept. It was the kind of neighborhood where people sat on their porches in the evening and waved at cars they did not recognize. Jermaine stood on that empty lot for 15 minutes. Did not move. Just stood there with his hands at his sides, looking at the dirt and the grass and the sky behind it. He could see it. 3 bedrooms, a kitchen big enough to cook a real meal, a porch with 2 chairs, a magnolia tree in the front yard, because Lorraine had always loved magnolias. He bought the land for $9,000 cash, paid a small crew, 3 men from his neighborhood who did construction on the side, to lay the foundation and frame the house. The deal was simple. He paid them for the heavy work. Everything else he did himself. On his 1 day off each week, Jermaine drove to that lot and worked. He painted walls. He installed cabinets that he bought second-hand from a renovation supply store on Lamar. He laid tile in the bathroom on his hands and knees, following a tutorial on his phone, replaying the same video over and over until he got it right. His hands, the same hands that gripped a steering wheel 18 hours a day, now held paintbrushes and screwdrivers and caulk guns. There was paint on his collar for weeks, sawdust in his hair. His fingernails were cracked and black with grime. But for the first time in years, Jermaine was smiling. One Saturday he stood back and looked at a wall he had just painted. Soft yellow. The color Lorraine had wanted for the kitchen in the home they never got to build together. He stared at it for a long time. Then he nodded to himself. Getting there, he whispered, there was one more thing Jermaine did that nobody knew about. Not Curtis. Not Thelma. Not a single soul. On a Sunday evening after the drywall in the attic was finished, Jermaine climbed up with a small wooden box. He placed it behind the insulation, deep in the corner, where no one would find it unless they knew to look. He stood there for a moment, looked at the box, nodded. Then he sealed the wall shut and climbed back down. He never told anyone what was inside. The weeks turned into months. The house grew, walls went up, a roof went on, windows were installed. Jermaine planted a magnolia tree in the front yard, just a sapling, thin and young, but it would grow. One afternoon, Thelma Banks drove out to see the progress. She had not been there in weeks, and when she pulled up and saw the house standing there small and neat, with its white fence and yellow trim, she put her hand over her mouth. She sat in the car for a full minute before she could get out. "Jermaine," she said, walking up to him. Her voice cracked. "Lorraine would be so proud of you." Jermaine wiped his forehead with the back of his hand. Sawdust fell from his sleeve. "It ain't done yet," he said. Year 6. Jermaine was 55 years old, and his body was talking to him in ways he could no longer ignore. It started with the cough, a dry, persistent cough that showed up in the middle of the night and would not leave. He told himself it was dust from the construction. Then it was the weight loss, 15 pounds in 3 months without trying. His shirts hung loose on his frame. His belt needed a new hole punched in it. Then it was the chest pain. Not all the time. Just when he drove late at night, when the fatigue settled deep into his bones and his heart had to work harder to keep up, it would start as a tightness, like someone pressing a fist into his sternum. Then it would spread to his left arm. Then his jaw. He would grip the steering wheel, breathe slow, and wait for it to pass. It always passed, so he kept driving. He did not see a doctor, could not afford the time, could not afford the money, and could not afford anyone telling him to stop. The house was almost done. He was so close. 6 years of his life were in that notebook. 6 years of 4 o'clock mornings and 10 o'clock nights. He was not going to stop now. Not when the finish line was right there. Now here is something that matters. According to the CDC, Black men in America die from heart disease at a rate more than 30% higher than the national average. Part of it is genetics, but a bigger part is this: not going to the doctor, not having health insurance, and a culture that tells men, especially black men, to tough it out, to push through, to keep working no matter what. Jermaine was the definition of that culture, and it was killing him. Curtis saw it first. It was a Thursday night, about 11 o'clock. Curtis was driving back from the airport when he spotted the Crown Victoria pulled over on the shoulder of Airways Boulevard. Hazard lights on, engine running. He pulled up behind it and got out. Through the driver's side window, he could see Jermaine hunched forward, both hands on the steering wheel, forehead resting on his knuckles. His face was covered in sweat. His breathing was shallow and fast. Curtis opened the door. Jay, talk to me." Jermaine looked up. His eyes were glassy. "I am fine. Just give me a minute. You are not fine. Look at you. You can barely breathe. It is just the heat. I forgot to drink water today, Jermaine." Curtis crouched beside the car. His voice was low and serious. "Brother, you need to see a doctor. This is not normal." Jermaine shook his head slowly. "The house is almost done, Curtis. I just need a few more months. A few more months and it is finished. Then I will rest. What good is that house if you are dead?" The question hung in the air. Jermaine closed his eyes. "Just a few more months," he whispered. Curtis stood there on the side of that dark road and looked at his friend, a man who had given everything he had for a promise he made to his dying wife, a man whose body was breaking down one organ at a time, and there was nothing Curtis could do but watch. Meanwhile, that same Thursday night, Brenda was at a rooftop bar in Midtown Memphis with Darren. She posted a photo on Instagram. Her and Darren, glasses raised, city lights behind them. The caption read, "Living our best life." She did not call her father that week, or the week after. One night, in late September, Jermaine had the worst episode yet. The pain hit at 2 in the morning. He was sitting at the kitchen table writing in the notebook when it came on like a wave. Not just tightness this time. Real pain, sharp and deep like something tearing inside his chest. He grabbed the edge of the table and held on. His vision blurred. His left arm went numb. For a full minute he thought this was it. This was how it ended. At a kitchen table in a duplex on Gill Avenue. Alone. But the pain eased. Slowly. Like a fist unclenching. He sat there for a long time, breathing, waiting, making sure. Then he did something he had never done before. He pulled out a sheet of paper and began to write. Not numbers this time, words. He wrote slowly, carefully, stopping every few lines to think. When he was done, he folded the letter, placed it in an envelope, and wrote on the front in the same block letters he used for everything, for Brenda, "Only open when you are ready." The next day, Jermaine drove to the house in Whitehaven. He climbed up to the attic. He opened the wooden box that sat behind the insulation and placed the envelope inside next to the other things already there. He looked at the box one more time. Then he sealed it up and climbed back down. Jermaine knew his body was giving out. He just needed it to hold on a little longer, just long enough to keep his promise. The call came on a Saturday morning in October. Brenda's phone rang, and it was her father. "Baby girl, I want to show you something. Can you come out to Whitehaven this afternoon?" "What is in Whitehaven, Daddy?" "Just come. You will see." Brenda almost said she was busy. The word was right there on her lips, but something in his voice made her stop. He sounded different, lighter, almost excited, and she had not heard that sound in years. "Okay, Daddy, I will be there." She showed up at 2 o'clock. Darren was with her. He had insisted on coming even though Jermaine had not invited him. They drove down Shelby Drive and turned onto a quiet street lined with oak trees. And there it was. A small house. 3 bedrooms. White fence. Yellow trim. A magnolia tree in the front yard, taller now, its leaves catching the afternoon sun. Jermaine was standing on the porch. He wore clean clothes. He had shaved. And he was holding something in his hand. A single key on a plain metal ring. Brenda got out of the car and walked up the path. She looked at the house, then at her father, then at the house again. "Daddy, what is this?" Jermaine held out the key. His hand was shaking, not from the cold, not from fear, from 7 years of waiting for this exact moment. "Your mama asked me to build you a home," he said. "It took me a while, but here it is, baby girl." Brenda took the key. She looked at it in her palm. Then she looked up at her father, and for the first time in a very long time, the walls came down. Her face crumpled. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She stepped forward and threw her arms around him. "Daddy, I cannot believe you did this." "Believe it," Germain said softly. "Every bit of it is yours." Behind them, Thelma was standing on the sidewalk, both hands over her mouth, crying quietly. Curtis was there too, arms folded, nodding his jaw tight with emotion. Pastor Elijah Coleman from the church across the street had walked over. He put his hand on Germain's shoulder and said, "Well done, brother, well done," and Germain cried. For the first time in this entire story, Germain Carter cried. Not loud. No sound at all, really. Just tears rolling down his face while his daughter held him on the porch of the house he built with his own 2 hands. But there was someone else watching. Darren stood by the car. He had not moved. His eyes were not on the family. They were on the house, scanning the roofline, the lot size, the neighborhood. Darren looked at that house the way a man looks at a car he is about to flip. Not with love, with calculation. 3 months after the day he handed Brenda that key, Germain was still driving. But the schedule was different now. 10 hours a day instead of 18. Not by choice. His body simply could not do more. The cough was constant. He kept a handkerchief in his shirt pocket, and some days when the coughing fits hit hard, there was blood on the cloth. He folded it quickly and tucked it back in before anyone could see. He had lost more weight. His pants needed a belt on the tightest notch. And some mornings when he got out of bed, the room spun for a few seconds before it settled. He still wrote in the notebook every night. But now the entries were shorter. Just the date and the amount. No more running totals. The house was done. The promise was kept. The notebook was almost full. On a Wednesday evening, Germain picked up his phone and called Brenda. It rang 4 times. "Hey, Daddy. Hey, baby girl. I was thinking maybe we could have dinner this weekend. I could cook. Lorraine's smothered chicken. Like we used to." There was a pause. He could hear Darren's voice in the background. Music playing. "This weekend is not great, Daddy. Darren and I have plans. Can I call you back and we will figure something out?" "Sure, baby girl. No rush." "Okay. Love you." "I love you too, Brenda." She did not call back. Not that night. Not the next day. Not the day after that. Germain did not call again. He did not want to be a burden. On a Thursday night 2 weeks later, it rained in Memphis. The kind of cold November rain that comes sideways and turns the streets into mirrors. Germain was finishing his last ride of the night. His passenger was a young woman, maybe 25, sitting in the back seat, holding a toddler wrapped in a blanket. The child was coughing. The woman looked exhausted and scared. "Regional 1, please," she said. "The emergency room." Germain drove. When they arrived at the hospital, the woman reached into her purse and pulled out a handful of crumpled bills. She counted them twice. Her face fell. "Sir, I am so sorry. I only have $6. I thought I had more." Germain reached over and turned off the meter. "Do not worry about it, ma'am. Just take care of that baby." The woman looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. "God bless you, sir. You go on now," Germain said gently. "She needs you in there." He watched them walk into the emergency room. The woman holding her child closed the rain, soaking both of them. Then Germain put the car in drive and headed home. He did not go to the house in Whitehaven. He went back to the duplex on Gill Avenue. The same duplex he had lived in for over 20 years. He parked the Crown Victoria in the driveway, turned off the engine, sat there for a moment listening to the rain on the roof. Then he went inside. The house was quiet. The kitchen light was on the way he always left it. The notebook was on the table. The photo of Lorraine was on the wall by the hallway, the same photo that had been there since the year she passed. Germain sat down in his armchair, the one with the worn spot on the left armrest where his elbow always rested. He looked at Lorraine's photo for a long time. Then he smiled. A real smile. Peaceful. "I kept my promise, Lorraine," he said softly. He put his hand on his chest, closed his eyes, and he was still. The next morning, Curtis called at 7:15. No answer. He called again at 7:30. Nothing. By 8 o'clock, Curtis was at the door. He knocked, waited, knocked again. Then he used the spare key Germaine had given him years ago. He found him in the armchair, peaceful, eyes closed, a faint smile still on his face. His hand was resting on his chest, and tucked under his fingers was the photo of Lorraine. He must have taken it off the wall at some point during the night. Curtis stood in the doorway for a long time. He did not move. He did not make a sound. Then he sat down on the couch, across from his friend, and just stayed there, because there was nothing left to do, and there was nowhere else to be. Germaine Carter died the way he lived, quietly, without bothering anyone, sitting in the same chair he had sat in every night for 20 years. The funeral was held on a Tuesday at Mount Olive Baptist Church on Shelby Drive, the same church across the street from the house Germaine built. Pastor Elijah officiated. Curtis organized everything: the flowers, the program, the burial plot at Memorial Park. He paid for most of it out of his own pocket because Germaine had no savings left. Every dollar had gone into the house. The church was full. Neighbors from Gill Avenue, other cab drivers from Delta, the woman who ran the corner store where Germaine bought his groceries. Thelma sat in the front row, clutching a handkerchief, her shoulders shaking. Curtis sat next to her, stoic, jaw tight, eyes red. Brenda arrived 20 minutes late. She walked in through the side door wearing a black dress and sunglasses. Darren was beside her, his hand on the small of her back. She sat in the second row, not the first. She did not cry during the service. Her face was still. Her eyes were dry behind those sunglasses. Curtis noticed. Thelma noticed. Everyone noticed. After the burial people gathered at Thelma's house, Brenda did not stay long. She hugged a few people, accepted condolences with a nod, and left within the hour. Darren drove. 48 hours later, Brenda was sitting on the couch in her apartment when Darren brought it up. So, the house. What about it, babe? I have been thinking. That house in Whitehaven is worth at least $120,000 on the market right now, maybe more. New construction, good neighborhood. He sat down beside her. We could sell it, take the money, move to Atlanta, start fresh. There is nothing for us here in Memphis. Brenda was quiet for about 5 seconds. You are right, she said. There is nothing for me here anymore. She called a real estate agent the next morning. The agent, a woman named Patricia, drove out to see the property that afternoon. Miss Carter, this house is in excellent condition. I mean, it was just built. Are you sure you want to sell? Sometimes after a loss, people make decisions they regret later. I am sure, Brenda said. She did not go inside. She stood on the sidewalk and signed the listing agreement on the hood of Patricia's car. She never walked through the front door, never opened a closet, never climbed to the attic. She just signed her name and walked away. The house sold in 11 days. A young family, a husband and wife with a 3-year-old daughter. They loved it the moment they saw it. The magnolia tree, the white fence, the soft yellow paint in the kitchen. They paid $115,000. Brenda signed the closing papers on the same day her father was buried. The ink on the contract was still wet. And somewhere in the attic of that little house in Whitehaven, a wooden box sat behind the insulation, waiting for someone who would never come. Now here is something you should know. Every year in the United States, an estimated 3.5 million elderly Americans are financially exploited, most often by their own family members. The majority of these cases are never reported. This is why estate planning matters. This is why wills matter. Because without them, the life's work of people like Germaine Carter can disappear in a single signature. Germaine had no will, no lawyer, no estate plan. He put the house under Brenda's name because he trusted his daughter completely, and trust, as it turned out, was the most expensive thing he ever gave away. Thelma found out on a Sunday. She was driving home from church, taking the long way through Whitehaven, the way she sometimes did just to look at the house. She liked seeing it. It reminded her that good things still happened to good people. But When she turned onto Shelby Drive, something was different. There was a sign in the front yard, white with red letters, sold. Thelma pulled over. She sat in her car and stared at that sign for a long time. Then, she picked up her phone and called Curtis. Curtis, did you know about this? Know about what? The house, Jermaine's house. It is sold. There is a sign in the yard. Silence on the other end. A long silence. No, Curtis said. His voice was flat. No, I did not know. 20 minutes later, they were both sitting in Pastor Elijah's office at Mount Olive Baptist. The pastor listened. His face got heavier with every word. She sold it, Thelma said, and her voice broke. That man worked himself into an early grave for that house. And she sold it like it was nothing. Curtis sat in the chair next to her. He was not crying. He was past that. His jaw was set, and his hands were gripping the armrests. I watched him count every dollar, Curtis said quietly. Every single dollar, for 7 years. He used to show me the notebook. He would say, Curtis, we are at 42,000. Or, Curtis, we just passed 60. Like a man climbing a mountain and marking each step. I saw him at the store, Thelma added. Every week, buying the cheapest bread they had, store-brand peanut butter. He told me once he was saving for something important. Would not tell me what. I found out later it was the house. Pastor Elijah leaned forward. Have you spoken to Brenda? I tried calling, Curtis said. Goes straight to voicemail? I called too, Thelma said. Twice. The second time my number was blocked. The word spread through the neighborhood fast. Not through gossip, through grief. The woman at the corner store on Gill Avenue heard about it from another customer and shook her head slowly. That man used to come in here every morning. Coffee and a banana. That was his breakfast. $1.50. Every day for years. He never bought anything extra. Not once. A cab driver at Delta, who had worked with Jermaine for 15 years, heard about it at the dispatch office. He took off his cap and held it against his chest. Jay was the best of us, he said. Drove more hours than any man I know. Never complained, never called in sick, and his daughter sold his house before the dirt on his grave had time to settle. At the barbershop on Lamar, a man who had gone to high school with Jermaine sat in the chair and stared at the floor. He used to talk about that girl like she was made of gold. Everything he did was for her. Everything. Pastor Elijah tried one more time. He called Brenda from the church phone, thinking she might not recognize the number. It rang 3 times. Then a voice. Hello, Brenda. This is Pastor Elijah Coleman from Mount Olive Baptist Church in Memphis. I was your father's pastor. I need to talk to you about something important. There was a pause. I appreciate you calling, Pastor, but I am really busy right now. Can I call you back, Brenda? This is about the house your father built. There are things you need to know. I have already handled the house. Thank you for calling. Click. Pastor Elijah set the phone down and looked at Curtis and Thelma. Nobody said anything for a while. Then Thelma spoke. He did not even have a will, did he? Curtis shook his head. No, he put the house in her name. Said it was simpler that way. Said he did not need a lawyer because he trusted his daughter. Thelma closed her eyes. Jermaine Carter had no will, no lawyer, no estate plan. He put the house under Brenda's name because he trusted his daughter. And trust, as it turned out, was the most expensive thing he ever gave away. 3 weeks after the sale closed, the new family moved in. Their names were Andre and Monique Williams, both in their early 30s. They had a 3-year-old daughter named Zoe who ran through the empty rooms laughing the first time she saw the house. Andre was a maintenance supervisor at a hospital. Monique was a teacher's aide. They had saved for years to buy a home, and when they saw the listing on Shelby Drive, they knew it was the one. The magnolia tree, the white fence, the soft yellow kitchen that felt like sunshine even on a cloudy day. They loved it immediately. It was during the second week that Andre decided to check the attic. He wanted to add some extra insulation before winter. He climbed up through the access panel in the hallway ceiling and crawled across the plywood floor with a flashlight. The attic was clean, well built, clearly done with care. And then near the far corner, He saw something behind a section of insulation that looked like it had been placed differently from the rest. He pulled it back carefully. Behind it was a small wooden box, dark wood, simple, no lock. He brought it down the ladder and set it on the kitchen table. Monique came over. "What is that?" "Found it in the attic, behind the insulation. Someone put it there on purpose." Andre opened the lid. Inside were 4 things. The first was an envelope, white, sealed. On the front, in careful block letters, it said, "For Brenda. Only open when you are ready." The second was a small black notebook with a white label on the cover, "For Brenda's house. Promise to Lorraine." Monique picked up the notebook and opened it. The first page was dated 7 years earlier. It had 3 columns: date, amount earned, running total. She turned the pages slowly. Every single day was recorded. $143, $168, $97. Day after day after day. 7 years of entries. Every page filled in the same neat handwriting. She turned to the last page. The final total matched the cost of the house. And below the number in slightly larger letters the man had written, "Every dollar Lorraine. I did not miss a single day." Monique put the notebook down. Her hands were trembling. The third item was a photograph. A family photo. A man, a woman, and a little girl, about 5 years old. They were in a park, all 3 of them smiling. The kind of smile people have when they do not know anyone is watching. The fourth item was a bank savings book, the kind banks used to give you with a paper record of deposits. It was in the name of Brenda Carter. The balance was $12,041. Andre and Monique sat at the kitchen table in silence. Monique was crying. Andre was reading the notebook again, turning the pages one at a time. "This man built this house," Andre said slowly, "with a taxi. He drove a taxi and saved every dollar and built this house by hand for his daughter. And she sold it," Monique whispered. "She sold it and never even came inside." Andre looked at the envelope. "For Brenda. Only open when you are ready." They did not open it. It was not theirs to open. "We need to find his daughter," Andre said, "or someone who knew him." Monique picked up the photograph and turned it over. On the back, in that same handwriting, it read, "Carter family, Overton Park, Brenda's 5th birthday." Below that was a note, "If found, please contact Mount Olive Baptist Church, Shelby Drive, Memphis." The next morning, Andre drove to the church. Pastor Elijah was in his office. When Andre handed him the box and explained what they had found, the pastor held the notebook in both hands and could not speak for a long time. He finally looked up. "I will keep this safe," he said, "until she is ready." He placed the box in the bottom drawer of his desk, and there it sat, waiting. 6 months after the sale, Brenda Carter was sitting on the floor of an empty apartment in East Atlanta. The carpet was beige and stained. The walls were bare. The only furniture left was a mattress in the bedroom and a folding chair in the kitchen. Everything else was gone. Darren had taken it when he left. The couch, the television, the coffee table he said he paid for but probably did not, the kitchen set, even the shower curtain. He had sent one text message, 5 words. "It is not working out. Take care." She called him. The number was disconnected. She called again from a different phone. Blocked. She searched his name on social media. His accounts were deactivated. Darren Mitchell was gone, as cleanly and completely as if he had never existed. And so was the money. The $115,000 from the sale of her father's house had lasted exactly 6 months. Darren had put $30,000 into a marketing startup that never launched. He leased a BMW. He rented an apartment in Buckhead that cost $3,200 a month. He bought clothes, took trips, ordered bottle service at clubs Brenda had never heard of. She let him handle the finances because he said he was good with money. He was good with money, good at spending other people's money. By the time he left, the bank account had $812 in it. Rent was due in 9 days. Brenda sat on that bare carpet with her back against the wall and her knees pulled up to her chest. The apartment was quiet. No music, no television, no voice on the other end of a phone call. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of traffic outside. She looked down at her hands. They were soft, smooth, nails done. No calluses, no scars. And for the first time in years, she thought about her father's hands. The thick, rough skin on his palms. The cracks along his knuckles that never fully healed. The permanent stain of motor oil in the creases of his fingers. Hands that gripped a steering wheel for 18 hours a day. Hands that painted walls and installed cabinets and planted a magnolia tree in a yard that was supposed to be hers. She thought about the last time he called her, the dinner invitation she turned down, the call back she never made. She thought about the day she signed those papers on the hood of a car without ever walking through the front door, and then she remembered something. A voice, her own voice, 15 years old, standing in a doorway while a friend asked what her father did for a living. He is in transportation, not he drives a taxi, not he works harder than anyone I know, not he wakes up at 4 in the morning every single day so I can have lunch money. She had been ashamed of him, and the shame of that shame hit her now like a wall of water. She could not breathe. She sat there on that empty floor and cried. Not pretty crying. The kind where your whole body shakes and no sound comes out because the grief is too deep for noise. When she could finally speak, she picked up her phone and called the only person she could think of. It rang twice. "Hello, Denise. It is Brenda." A long pause. "I know who it is. Denise, I messed up. I messed up so bad." Another pause. Longer this time. Then Denise spoke. Her voice was calm. Not cold, but not warm either. "Brenda, I am going to tell you something you do not want to hear. You broke that man's heart long before he died. Every time you cut a phone call short, every time you were too busy to see him, every time you looked at his life and felt embarrassed instead of grateful, you broke him, and then you sold the only thing he ever cared about building, the only promise he ever made to your mother. You sold it for a man who left you with nothing." Brenda could not respond. "I am not saying this to be cruel," Denise continued. "I am saying it because nobody else will, and because your daddy is not here to say it himself." The line was quiet for a long time. Then Denise said something softer. "Where are you right now, Atlanta? Alone?" "I have nothing, Denise. Nothing." "Then I think it is time you came home." Brenda took a Greyhound bus back to Memphis. She had $43 left. The ride was 11 hours. She did not sleep. She stared out the window the whole way, watching the highway lines blur in the dark, and thought about every phone call she cut short. Every visit she rushed through. Every time her father said, "I love you, baby girl," and she said, "Yeah, love you too, Dad," like it was a reflex instead of a feeling. She arrived at the Memphis bus station at 6 in the morning. She had one bag. She stood on the sidewalk and realized she had nowhere to go. The duplex on Gill Avenue had been rented to someone else months ago. She had no friends left in the city, no family. There was only one door she could try. Thelma Banks opened it on the second knock. She was wearing a housecoat and slippers. She looked at Brenda for a long time, did not speak, did not smile, just looked. Then she stepped aside. "Come in. But we need to talk." They sat at Thelma's kitchen table, and Thelma told her everything. She told her about the 18-hour days, about the notebook where her father recorded every dollar, about the nights Curtis found him on the side of the road, clutching his chest, refusing to see a doctor, about the cabinets he installed with his own hands, the walls he painted himself, the magnolia tree he planted because her mother loved magnolias. She told her about the blood on the handkerchiefs, about the weight loss, about the way his hands shook in the last year. And she told her about the wooden box in the attic that Brenda never found because she never walked through the front door. Brenda sat there and took it, every word, every detail, each one landing like a stone dropped into still water. When Thelma finished, she picked up the phone and called Pastor Elijah. He came within the hour. He carried a small wooden box. He set it on the table in front of Brenda and said nothing. Brenda opened it. She saw the notebook first. She picked it up, read the cover. For Brenda's house. Promise to Lorraine. She opened the first page. The date, the amount, the running total. She turned the pages, one after another. Day after day after day. 7 years of her father's life written in neat columns, every dollar accounted for. She reached the last page, the final number, and below it in his handwriting, every dollar Lorraine. I did not miss a single day. Then she saw the photograph. Her family, Overton Park, her 5th birthday, all 3 of them smiling. She held it in both hands and stared at it until the image blurred. Then she opened the envelope. She unfolded the letter. And this is what it said. Dear Brenda, if you are reading this, then I am probably gone and you have found your way back to this house. I want you to know something. I know you have been pulling away from me. I know you are embarrassed by what I do, and I do not blame you for that. I wanted more for you too. That is why I built this house, not because you asked for it, not because you needed it, but because I needed you to know, no matter what happens, no matter where you go or who you become, you were loved. This house is not a gift, Brenda. It is proof. Proof that your mama and I loved you enough to build something that would last. I am not angry. I am not disappointed. I am just a father who did the best he could with what he had. Wherever you are, baby girl, I hope you feel safe. That is all your mama and I ever wanted. Love, Daddy. Brenda did not make a sound. She folded the letter, pressed it against her chest. Then she slid off the chair and sat on Thelma's kitchen floor and wept. There was no miracle. No hidden inheritance. No billionaire showing up to make it right. Just a letter from a dead man who loved her more than she ever understood. The house was gone. It belonged to the Williams family now, and they loved it. Brenda accepted that. She could not undo what she had done. But she could do something else. She applied for a job at the Memphis Workers Assistance Center, a nonprofit that helped taxi drivers, rideshare workers, and gig laborers access healthcare, financial planning, and legal aid. She started at the front desk, minimum wage. She took the bus to work every day, and every Saturday morning she drove to Memorial Park with a bunch of flowers and sat by her father's grave. She did not say much. Sometimes she just sat there. Sometimes she read to him from the notebook, 1 page at a time. She could not give her father back the house, but she could give other fathers what she wished she had given hers. Time, respect, and the dignity of being seen. Jermaine Carter never made a headline. He never trended on social media. Nobody wrote an article about him or put his face on a billboard. He was just a taxi driver in Memphis, Tennessee, who loved his daughter enough to destroy his own body, building her a home. He woke up at 3:30 every morning for 7 years. He drove 18 hours a day through heat and rain and exhaustion. He ate cold rice at midnight and slept 5 hours and did it all again the next day. He painted walls with hands that could barely grip a brush. He planted a tree he would never sit under. And he wrote a letter he hoped his daughter would never need to read. And that house, the one Brenda signed away on the day he died, it is still standing in Whitehaven. On a quiet street lined with oak trees across from a church with a white steeple, a family lives there now. A husband, a wife, a little girl who runs through the rooms laughing. They take care of it. They mow the lawn. They water the magnolia tree. They do not know the whole story, but they know someone loved that house enough to build it with their last breath. And here is what I want to leave you with. When was the last time you called your father not to ask for something, not to check a box, but just to hear his voice? When was the last time you told him you were proud of him? Not for what he gave you, but for who he was. If you have a parent who is still working, still grinding, still pushing through pain because they think they have to talk to them, ask them about their health. Ask them if they have a will. Ask them if their life's work is protected, because love that is not protected is love that can be lost. And too many people like Jermaine pour everything they have into something beautiful and leave it with no safety net. Some people show love with words. Jermaine showed it with 18 hours behind the wheel every single day for 7 years. And the tragedy is not that Brenda sold the house. The tragedy is that she never understood what it cost. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe. I will see you in the next one. Now, before you go, I want to be real with you for a moment. This story is fiction. Jermaine, Brenda, Darren, Curtis, Thelma. They are not real people. I made them up. But the situations in this story are very real. Financial exploitation of elderly parents happens every single day in this country. Taxi drivers and gig workers do sacrifice their health, with no safety net, no insurance, no retirement plan, and children do take their parents for granted until it is too late. I made this video because my own grandfather was a cab driver. He drove for 31 years in this city. He never complained. Not once. He never asked me for anything, and I did not appreciate him enough while he was here. I did not call enough. I did not visit enough. I did not sit with him long enough to hear the stories he wanted to tell, and by the time I realized that he was gone. So, if you still have the chance, do not wait. Do not assume there will be a next time. Pick up the phone. Show up at the door. Sit down and stay a while. Take care of the people who take care of you. Love you all. See you next time.